Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Grillo. I'm Vice President and Group Publisher for McGraw-Hill Professional, which is a division of the newly formed McGrawHill Education. So my group really publishes everything that we kind of consider post-secondary medical science, engineering, computing, do a business trade list. We're spending most of the time today talking about medical, given the audience and stuff. And just so I have a quick sense, I think I'm the only speaker here that doesn't have anything to do with journals. How many folks in the room, kind of similar, don't do journals intently? Okay. Just so I have some sense of like who's sort of half paying attention, who's completely tuned me out, which is most of the room, but okay. Well, just to get some of the quickie background information. So McGraw-Hill Education, we've been in medical publishing for a long time, over 60 years. We actually started online publishing in 1999. The launch of we called Harrison's Online. It was online access to a single title, did a few updates here and there. For the last 10 or 12 years, we've obviously, as the market's moved away from kind of educational reference content and print to an online model, we've made a lot of pretty significant investments, both in terms of product development, but people, how we do things, job processes, and things like that, to get to where we are today, which is what we really call the access model. So we have about 14 different individual subscription products and platforms in a lot of different specialties. And we think of these as being a unique set of content, our content, which is well-known, well-trusted, well-respected, with a lot of rich media, which we've built. We have a whole setup now doing that, and a unique set of curriculum tools, which we've really used as kind of the lever to embed ourselves more deeply into the educational workflow. So what I'm going to talk today is really about that evolution, kind of how we got to where we are today, and hopefully share some of the things that we learned along the way. So, digital beginnings, like I said, I couldn't find a screenshot of Harrison's Online. I wish I could have. Be interesting to take a look at. That started in 1999. Around 2002, we started to, like everybody else, just kind of plow more and more books online, and our digital beginnings were probably not all that different from a lot of other publishers. It was an online bookshelf. Looked very much like an online bookshelf. We were very proud of our books, and so there they were, front and center. We started doing some interesting things like adding updates and stuff, but it was really, by and large, an ebook collection. And around 2002, we realized we couldn't just keep promoting the different individual book brands, so we relaunched it and rebranded the site as Access Medicine. And that's kind of about the time that I got involved with the medical side of the business and working on the product. Here's where we are today. As I said, they're what we think are a unique blend of a learning environment with our educational content, clinical content, and as of last week, we have almost 100% penetration in the U.S. medical school market. So it's not bad in the last 10 years. That doesn't mean we're where we want to be in terms of sales. It just means we have a touch point into just about every one of those 165, 166 U.S. medical schools. So a little bit about how we got there in those 10 years. So the phase one is what I called kind of moving beyond ebooks and trying to keep thematically with the session today. It was first really about discovery, where we started really focusing on. So as the market matured, our approach to product development really had to mature, and we had to think a little bit more strategically about what we were trying to do and what we were trying to provide, aside from just giving people access to as much of our content online. So this is around the 2003, 2004 time. We started looking at a lot of the key attributes of digital products at that time. Not a list that's surprising to anybody here that's involved with digital publishing. But what we found was, people really wanted fast and accurate search. At this time, I think Google was pretty well established. It was pretty well along the way of training everybody how they should search and how search is done today. And that was certainly true with homegrown products. People were expecting that from Google. So if they were going to subscribe and use your product, it had to be fast, it had to be accurate, and had to be organized. We found that, particularly in this market, people were looking for resources with a lot of rich media. So while Google was pretty well established, YouTube was kind of coming together. It was a little bit in its infancy. People were certainly starting to use it to find clinical media. But just like with anything else in YouTube, it's kind of here today, gone tomorrow. The quality was of varying results. It was hard to find, hard to organize. So we felt, well, that could be an opportunity. People wanted, resources that had a lot of powerful tools that could be integrated with their daily workflow. A term that's now been beat to death. But certainly in 2003, it was kind of an emerging idea. Don't make me go other places. This is where I work. This is where I want to find my information. And they wanted resources that would develop for their particular needs. So kind of one size fits all just didn't work for medicine. Surgeon's workflow is very different from an anesthesiologist, from an emergency medicine. Everything from the type of content that they were using to where they were accessing the content. Whether they had access to a workstation, whether they were behind their desk a lot or not behind their desk at all. So, we realized, again, that this kind of one-size-fits-all access medicine, here's everything that we have on one product, was not going to work. So we shifted the strategy a little bit and started thinking about, producing specialized products that took our content that people have been using for a long time in print. We could start adding some rich media and trying to figure out different ways of making the search as fast and accurate as possible. So, along with our partner at that time, and still today, Silverchair, I think we invested pretty heavily and I guess maybe early in semantic search technology. We drank the Kool-Aid pretty quickly. And we found that it was really worth it. The results that we got from, simply laying a semantic search engine across the amount of content on Access Medicine that we had, didn't give us, Google speed or Google type of breadth, but we were searching across a much more limited database. But it did give us a lot of accuracy. It certainly gave us a lot of accuracy. We were able to add clinical modifiers to our content. Now you can see we were still pretty, even in the relaunch here, I'm not sure, this may be 2005 or 6, we're still pretty book heavy. That's where a lot of the content was coming from. But at least we were able to give people pretty quickly with this search engine the full breadth and scope of what we had in a particular topic. And then using the semantics over on the left, we were able to give them clinical modifiers to let them start, narrowing down their search. And so that was a little bit of a step ahead for us. Our search was ranked in order of appearance. We were able to start to highlight a little bit of the rich media that we may have had at that time. That was the other area that we had identified in those kind of 4 key attributes where we felt like we could do some different things than our competitors and start adding value, beyond just access to our content. And again, we invested pretty heavily and pretty early in developing a lot of rich media. So we started with things that were relatively simple, like taking photo libraries or photo images. We found through the normal acquisition process, we had editors in hematology that, they're working on a big book, big reference title. It could only be 2,000 pages because that's all we could print. But, these guys had libraries and libraries and slides and reams of media that they were just looking for some place to put it. So, we had unlimited possibilities, obviously, with online. And so we started, developing animations, started developing videos, pretty crude at first, but, our technology got a little bit better. And today we actually have a fairly full-scale production where we're doing, pretty large clinical procedure videos. So we, come up with the procedures, say for Harrison's, and how to do a chest intubation or how to insert a central line. We get it storyboarded. We have it shot at the Brigham and Women's or Mount Sinai. So it's really advanced, along those ways from just kind of gathering stuff that was there to, really being very prescriptive about what we wanted and how we wanted to produce it and how we wanted it to be assimilated with the rest of the content. And again, going back to what the semantic search gave us, it gave us a way to organize our search results and really expose all the different types of content that we offered. Something we call internally kind of bucketed search results. So, this is a shot from Access Surgery. If somebody comes in and looks for their head and neck tumors, we were able to expose them to all the different types of content that we have. So it's more than just, here's a bunch of books, here's a bunch of links to the content in these different books, but really expose you to whatever it is we may have, textbook content, atlas content, videos and animations, board review questions. Again, a little bit, a way of kind of organizing the content, because we all know people kind of just come in and start typing and hope that they get what they want. And the semantic search also enabled us to enable discovery across the sites that we had. So this was something that is a benefit we're seeing today. So as we started rolling out into the different subspecialties, which I'll talk about a little bit more, we were selling to, by and large, the same customer, a librarian at a medical institution or a program director. So it was important for us to be able to show them not only were these siloed sites, but we did have a way to expose them and their users to all the content that we had across these various sites, which was important to give them a full range of the scope of content they were purchasing. So we got about 2 years into this strategic build out, mostly, like I said, with Access Medicine in terms of advancing our search engine capabilities, our search technology, adding a lot of rich media to the content that we had. And we were making good on a number of those strategic initiatives, gaining some market penetration for Access Medicine. But we started, really taking a look at where we were at that time, 2005. And like I said, I think the first two initiatives that we had identified, we were making good progress on. The last two, we were still struggling with. We weren't quite sure, what this meant to say, resources developed for particular needs. We were still one product. All of our content goes into one product strategy. And wrestling around with kind of the tools idea. What did that really mean? What were people looking for? And that kind of got us into the late 2005, 2006, as we started moving into phase two. And again, keeping here thematically the delivery and presentation model. So we started thinking about at that time really expanding our digital offerings into the key medical subspecialties. And we published a lot of niche content in a lot of specialized markets that placed a high value on content. We had leading resources in emergency medicine, in surgery, in pharmacology. And as I said, all those markets are completely different. Some of the specialists spend a lot of time at a computer. Some of them are on their feet for 12 hours a day running around. Maybe they touch a computer at the nursing station. So we had to think about different types of delivery applications for different subspecialties. We had a lot of content that was, like I said, very well respected and well branded, which is always helpful when you're trying to launch a new product. We also had a lot of competitors in the market. There were the traditional players, Elsevier, Lippincott, and others. A lot of the aggregators kind of going after wallet share in this space, Ovid and StatRef and others. And at this time, they were up, not really new, up to date, and Dynamed, who were sort of taking a different approach to how to develop and present content. So this was not, a layup for us. I mean, we had good books. Didn't necessarily mean we were going to be able to translate that into online resources that we could monetize. And again, this notion of embedded applications or becoming part of the workflow was starting to take hold in the workplace. We realized it was important, and if we were going to do it, we had to find some meaningful way of doing it that we felt other people's weren't. And probably, as a leader or manager of this group, I just couldn't shake the feeling that we were still just functioning as traditional publishers. Yes, we were online. Yes, we had our content online. We were doing things like updates and media and stuff. But really, we were just packaging content sets. The delivery mechanism had changed, but our mindset and our approach to how we thought about our customers, how we thought about the tools and the products that we were trying to provide to them, really hadn't changed. It was kind of still, here's our stuff. We hope you like it. So at that time, we really started to shift our product strategy away from just thinking about aggregating as much content as we had and thinking about becoming much more customer-centric and much more embedded in the workflow. And so those were kind of the goals that we set for ourselves in about 2005, 2006. So So in order to build customer-centric products, you got to really understand your customers. And I think I could have asked any one of my folks at that time, and they would have just rattled off the list. You know, we published for the broad spectrum of medical education, everything from students to residents all the way through clinicians, and that was great. But I'm not sure we really kind of fundamentally understood what it was that each of those different customers did that was the same and did that was unique in terms of the content that they had. So in order to, like I said, build customer-centric products, we had to re-examine our customers and probably more importantly, look for underserved or emerging content needs that match some of our strengths. So if you look, you see a lot of similarities here amongst these different end user groups. They all use reference material. A lot of them use primary literature, which a lot of folks in the room here I'm sure provide. And different types of things depending on where they are in that kind of medical education continuum. So that was helpful. We felt like, okay, we sort of identified the different types of assets, things that we had, things that we didn't have, things that we could provide, things that we were never going to get into primary literature. So that was sort of had to take off the key. And again, the other goal is to be embedded in the workflow. And I think again, you could ask anybody, they would have rattled off an answer for you that probably would have been half good. But I think we had to really get inside and understand what that meant for each of these markets, and it was different. It was absolutely different for each market. The clinical side, the practitioners, yes, it's point-of-care reference material, and different people at that time were trying to do to attack that market. It meant charting, billing, coding. It meant CME. It meant all the things that a clinician running around during the day wants to see. A little bit different maybe from a resident who's got kind of that quasi-student, quasi-practitioner role in their life, and definitely different from a medical student. But we did start to notice a couple of interesting things as we focused on the sort of the bottom tier of the pyramid here, was that there were some interesting, unique, but similar things: curriculum support, tracking and reporting. These were embedded applications or things that people would have liked to see embedded in their workflow that were not. So unmet needs that seemed like an interesting opportunity. And then right in the middle was a target market that I don't think we really thought about very much until we kind of got into the space, which was program directors. Could be on the clerkship side, could be on the residency side. So these people were involved both in really both sides of the equation. They were educators, they were influencing students, influencing residents, making decisions about what content people were going to use. They were also clinicians themselves, so they had that sort of dual mindset. So it made sense for us at that time to spend a lot of time with these people trying to understand what's happening in residency education, what's happening in clerkship education, how are those things translating over to practice, and where could a traditional publisher with a lot of this stuff sitting on a bookshelf perhaps find a way to become more meaningful. And in those discussions, and we had a lot of them, a lot of program directors we had access to, or traditional publishing model. We thought we found kind of that perfect sweet spot where we could play in the residency education market. It was definitely an underserved market. Nobody was really spending a lot of time worrying about program directors or residency directors at that time. And it was obvious that there were some very clear, points of pain or some unmet needs that we're having. There was a lot of change, this is around 2006, happening in this market, and in different degrees, different, sort of depending on the subspecialty, but a lot of similarities, kind of, or themes running across the board. One, there was starting to emerge a standard curriculum. So, all the different residency programs have their own flavor, and, Harvard would never admit to doing the same things that Yale does, but, through the work of a lot of the boards, the American Board of Surgeons, American College of Cardiology and things, they were starting to get this notion that we need to have some standardization amongst these different residency programs, some way of saying that, resident here coming out of this program is going to have roughly the same amount of exposure to knowledge and training that anybody else does. So that was a unique idea. At the same time, a lot of the specialties were really starting to crack down on the work week. So they were implementing hard and fast rules, particularly in surgery, that residents could not spend any more than 80 hours a week in the hospital. Well, People chuckle. It seemed like a great idea. I mean, program directors were just freaked out. You know, I got 5 years with these people. If I can't keep them locked to my side for 115 hours a week, there's just no way they're ever going to learn. But that was it, 80 hours a week, and it was pretty hard and fast rule. So people were really, you know, stressed about how am I going to convey all this knowledge and get all this training across. At the same time, there was a lot more scrutiny from the residency review committees about reporting and making sure that you could report and document that people were getting the learning and the education they needed outside the hospital. So, again, you know, these people aren't, you know, unbusy people, let's just say. They got clinical practices they run on themselves as well as being responsible for 14 or 15 individuals in their education. Now all of a sudden they're saying, you got to document all this stuff and prove to us that people are learning outside the hospital. So that was a kind of a problem. And, you know, the biggest thing I think was there was a lack of kind of specialized online resources. So Access Medicine was great, Ovid was great, all these things were great, but, you know, nobody was really developing something for me, for my specialty. So that's what we set out to do. A little bit of an ambitious goal, but we felt, you know, if this is going to be our opportunity to do something more meaningful and connect with our customers in a more meaningful way than we had been perhaps in the past. So Access Surgery launched in 2006, and as I said, it became the template for all the additional verticals that we produced in these subspecialty markets. And a couple of the, you know, my elevator pitch and, you know, what our specialties are really is, you know, they're highly structured. You know, we always want to have a sort of anchor point to how we organize our content. They're always going to be very heavy in rich media. You know, we're going to develop or produce or license or however we can get our hands on things that are very meaningful, that can, you know, embed into our content set and really enrich and enliven the engagement with our content. And they will be embedded, meaning we will try to find ways to really make our sites a part of the everyday workflow for these different things. That's not what Access Surgery looked like when it launched in 2006. There it is. A beautiful site. Not so much, really. But, you know, in terms of product development, this was a real departure for us. If you remember that first slide I showed, our sort of digital beginnings, the online bookshelf, you know, it's like, here's all our books. Here we are, here's our books. I mean, first thing you'll notice here is, you know, there's very few, there they are, down here. We didn't have a list of books on the page. You know, the books were not the focus of this site. What we had was what we heard from the market. You know, we have a core curriculum. That's what we heard from talking to surgical directors. Here's our core curriculum. Here's all the things that we need to instill in our residents over the next 5 years. And so they were thinking about it topically, we thought about it topically. We'd also learned from doing this investigation that they had this kind of core set of procedures. I think at the time it was 120 or 125 procedures or operations that at the end of a 5-year general residency program you had to be proficient in. So it made sense that a lot of the residents coming in were going to be looking for material, and that's how they thought about the content. They didn't think about it as, oh, let me see what, you know, Schwartz's Principles of Surgery has. It didn't make any sense to them. They didn't know the books, didn't recognize the books, the brands, the publishers. All they wanted to know was, you know, what can I get, how much information can I get from here on trauma and burns? And I want it in textbook material, I need to read it, maybe I'd like to see a procedure. That's how they thought about it. So this is the first time, I think, that we approached the product development not with a very inward-looking, you know, look at us, look at our books, you know, we're great, you've used us, you've read us forever, so read us online. But really, you know, we understand what you're doing, we understand how you're looking for content. Let us try to put together a product that looks a little bit more the way you think. There we go. The other thing that you'll notice here was we had the core curriculum, and as we started to get into it a little bit, we started to understand this idea of customization. So people talked about the core curriculum, but then they started, you know, kicking around this idea, gee, wouldn't it be great if, you know, we could do our own thing, build our own learning modules, you know, customize this idea a little bit. So That really kicked us off and started us down the road to building out these kind of curriculum support tools. So organizing the content was step one. Building some tools that address the other points of pain about being able to report and track and manage and develop learning modules and all those sorts of things was the other pains point that we were going to try to address. And it was a very nonlinear product development path. We kind of went from building generic tools to customizing to moving back towards more generic tools. And we just kind of ebb and flow with the market. And it was also very nonlinear from the end users that we were trying to support. So we had program directors who were very important and very influential. If we could get them to turn on the custom curriculum, instant stickiness and attractiveness to them. But we also had the residents, so we needed to build the tools that were meaningful for them. So, our product development tended to kind of go back and forth between generic and custom and focus on the administrator, focus on the end user, which is hard to do at the same time. And so you'll see the first iteration was very generic. It was simply mapping our content to an emerging curriculum. Providing people, like I said, access to the content the way they thought about it, not the way that we thought about it. We provided some really basic and generic tools that enabled the administrators to set up simple curricula. So they could kind of go in, they say, I got 6 weeks. Here's the rotation, here's the content that I want you to read, here's the videos that I want you to watch. We were not closed-minded. We realized there was going to be a lot of content that we didn't provide. It was going to be very essential. Could be links to key journal articles in their subject. Could be showing up for grand rounds next Wednesday. All we wanted to do was provide the workspace that they could track all that. Put it in there, manage it, push it out to their residents, one space that they come in to look at, see all the stuff. Now, the more content that we had that we could provide, great, but this was not... it has to be the McGraw-Hill view of the world. And some very generic tools. Like I said, we knew accreditation and reporting and tracking was important. It was an unmet need. So, we built some tools that gave them, like I said, nothing fancy. It didn't look particularly pretty, but it worked really well. It gave administrators the ability to drill down to their residents, see who was reading, see who was doing the different assignments. So when the accreditation board comes in, they could pretty much just spit out a report and say, here you go. Here's my 9 folks. Here's what they've been reading. Here's what they've been watching outside of the hospital hour. Ease of use was really important. Again, these were not necessarily technically savvy people. They didn't want to spend a lot of time learning different types of tools. For the most part, they knew our content. They searched the content. So, we knew we had to just really focus on making it very easy when they were setting up these different modules or learning modules to just, while they were browsing, while they were scanning, if they were logged in as an administrator, say, gee, this looks good, click it, add it to my rotation, click it, add it to my rotation, and build it out. And that was really, really important in terms of getting a lot of early adoption. This was not going to be an opportunity to come in and train a lot of people on a lot of complex tools. So for the residents, again, the early iteration was also pretty generic. Residents could sign in. They could see the available rotations that had been put up by their program directors, which you can see there. So here's appendectomies. It tells them they need to do this kind of required reading. They need to watch these different types of videos. There's looks like additional assignments down here, complete grand rounds, link to an article. I don't know why it's Wikipedia, but hey, I didn't put it together. And do their board review. So, they could come in, they could pretty quickly read it, watch it, do whatever they needed to do, and then it tracked their progress. So it gave them a sense of completion. And also when their program directors logged in and looked at them, they could see, is about where he or she should be 4 weeks into the 6-week rotation. So the adoption tool set grew sort of the demands for more custom applications. So we went from pretty generic, get a bunch of stuff out there, see how it works, to now we want to customize this stuff. So we started to sense the demand to build tools to give program directors more control over how their content was assigned. Program directors were asking, I'd like to build learning modules, learning objectives, pre-tests, post-tests, so I could start to see where they are coming into the 6-week rotation, where they are when they come out of the rotation. And they really wanted to be able to customize the test. So it wasn't just that they needed to take 120 questions on cardiomyopathy. Now they needed to, customize that down to the individual question level. So then we went down the custom application. We also knew that this was a very, tight community. A lot of competition, but it's a very collegial, all the program directors get together in these different specialties and meet and talk about it. And they're all, for the most part, very much moving in the same direction, which is how do we improve the educational process, how do we improve the quality of time that we're spending with our residents. So as our tool started to get adopted, people said, it'd be great if I could share, I'd love to see what Michigan is doing when they teach appendectomies, or I'd love to understand what Harvard's doing. So as we got program directors involved and they were starting to build these programs and build learning modules, we gave them the ability to share it. So anybody that came in, they logged it, they could build a curriculum. It could be a full curriculum, it could be one learning module, they could post it in the shared site. And it gave other program directors the ability to come in, lift that whole learning module, add to it, modify it, change it. We always gave credit to the original builder of that particular learning module. But again, it helped speed adoption, because somebody could come in and say, this is just, I don't have time to build these learning modules. We could say, hey, look, we got a lot of stuff. We got a bunch of our program directors. A little bit of arm twisting and maybe a little money to go in and do a lot of this, and then said, we're going to make you share it. They were happy to do it, but it helped speed adoption of this, because people could see that there's already a lot of stuff here. Now maybe it's not as daunting as it would have been if I could take a lot of pre-canned stuff and add to it. And we started enhancing our reporting capabilities. So we gave custom program directors the ability to customize a little bit what it was that they were reporting, get some different metrics that they could use to see how their students were doing. On the end user side, so now, we're sort of back from focusing on our administrators, who are always an important target audience, to back to the end users. This idea of peer-to-peer sharing and social networking was starting to come into play. A lot of medical school, medical education today is sort of case-based learning or problem-based learning, where they work in small groups. So that's the way they were working and thinking about it, and they weren't just off in their room doing these case assignments by themselves. It was small group work. So we needed a way to kind of facilitate that. So we needed a way to have learning modules that could be created that says you're going to work with your group. Allow the group activities to be built in this environment, shared with program directors in this environment, streamline the communication a little bit between multiple learners, if it's residents or the program directors. And like I said, give the end users an ability to create assignments. And they were actually able to build and create a portfolio online, so they keep track of all this stuff over their 3, 4, or 5 years. So we created more of an active learning environment. Like I said, we allowed for the management and creation of teams, management of all the group assignment work that they may have in that particular rotation, and then, like I said, an immediate feedback loop. So right within the same tool, they could get comments and things back. None of this was novel. I mean, this was not anything that we were out creating for the first time. There were Blackboard and WebCT and Angel and all these things, but again, nobody was really focusing their tool set on this particular market. So we were able to kind of grab bits and pieces of best practices from out there. What we did that was unique, or at least I think was unique, was kind of stick it inside a content resource that we already felt was valuable and being used. Give them one online resource to go to that they could use. So then the pendulum swung back from custom back to generic. So as we got more and more adopters and started to move into clerkships, people said, you know what, this is great. Shared libraries are great. I don't even want to wrap my head around it. Just build me a curriculum for my first year clerks in OB-GYN. So that's what we did. Again, we went out, and again, not anything different. We've been out working with authors to write books, convincing people to create content for us. This was just a different type of content, a different type of assignment. I said, we don't need you to write a book for us. What I need you to do is document and write down what Vanderbilt's first-year clerkship rotation looks like for OB-GYN. And I'm going to publish it online, and I'll pay you for it. So, it's just a different way of tapping into our audience, or our author base, if you will, that was more than just, I need you to write an article, or I need you to write a book, or I need you to, narrate this video series. I need you to build curriculum for me, and I'm going to publish it, and I'm going to use it. And they were pretty much happy to do it. So again, sped the adoption process a lot, as we were able to start putting up a lot of prepackaged, kind of generic curriculum, if you will. And then again, it went back towards the customized side. So as we started to get in here, now a lot of the specialty boards, so MREC was one of them, Emergency Medicine Education Residency Council, I think, said, we've got our curriculum. This is what we want everybody to use. Could you guys publish it for us? So great, absolutely. On the surgical side, we started getting a lot of device equipment providers. It said, we have these huge simulators we're selling. These are several $100,000 installations. We don't have anybody, great way of integrating it with content. We know people are spending a lot of time in the simulator and they're training. Is there any way we could use your tool to kind of build a learning curriculum, a learning environment for how you use our tool? I said, sure, why not, I guess. So Symbionics was one that we did that, and now so now actually we've moved outside of just the library, outside of the nurse's station. Our content is actually in the operating room. When they're working on a lot of these tools, they're able to plug right into our content, pull up a video, pull up a paragraph, really make it a much more meaningful experience to what they're doing. So based on the success that we've had there, like I said, about 2 years ago, we started focusing on the clerkship market, in the medical school area, which is much bigger, much broader market, target audience for us. And, we do things a little bit differently. Clerks are still very much students, so it's a lot more on the reference side. The Q&A material that we have there is a little bit lower level than we would have for residents, who are kind of focused on board review. We do a lot more case files, because medical education is a lot more case-based than it is in residency. And again, we just target, take basically the same ideas that we have, but shift it a little bit downstream. So putting it all together, the discovery, delivery, presentation. As I said, this year is kind of 10 years into this initiative, the Access Initiative. I think we've carried many of our initial objectives forward. These are some shots of what our newly launched sites will look like in a little bit. And again, I think we're still organizing and presenting content the way our users think about it. So it's not about look at us, look at our books, look at our brands. We're great. It's all about we know what people are doing when they come to their sites. They're learning, they're watching, they're reading, they're taking Q&A. That's how we've organized the sites. So it's much more action-oriented than just here's our stuff. We're still deeply involved and big believers in semantic and the power of semantic tagging and what that can do for us, and still focused on search. I think in today's world, you got to be pretty fast and accurate and highly relevant and organized, and that's still very much a focus of our product development. We're still looking, like I said, and focused on high-quality media assets. So we've moved beyond just collecting stuff that people might have to being very prescriptive and thinking about what it is that medical students or medical residents are learning in terms of procedures and core procedures, and thinking about ways that if we can put together a 15-minute video on a chest intubation, that's great, because that really helps. An emergency medical resident lives by the learn one, teach one, learn one, do one, teach one. And then you're proficient. So you stand there and you watch one chest intubation, and the next time you do it, and then you teach somebody else how to do it. A lot of learners, that's a little bit daunting. So if they can have a place that they can go at their own pace, watch it, rewind it, watch it again, watch it, it gives them a sense of comfort when they go in to actually do or teach. It's a big part of learning, a big part of our international. Particularly when you move outside the U.S., you don't have to rely so much on translations. A lot of video material is easily accessible in different languages. And again, our custom curriculum continues to evolve, continues to change and adapt to our end users, and we're still very big believers in that idea of supporting our content with a lot of powerful tools that we can really embed and make a more meaningful connection to our end users. Asked to give lessons learned. Well, these are probably pretty trite. Start with a deep understanding of your content and how people are using it. I think, like I said, everybody sort of reflexively thinks how people use their content. When you really get inside and examine it, you may find that people are using it in different ways than you thought. And you look for unmet needs that you can possibly address. Identify those points of pain. You know, content acquisition, content knowledge is hard these days. There's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of distractions, increasing or decreasing demands and access to content on different devices. Identify that and try to address those. You know, build the tools if you can that help address some of those things. Involve your target audience early and often. We spent a lot of time talking to people during the build out, after the build out, listening to what people said about our tools and trying to improve them. And then finally, I'd say, you know, embrace that kind of nonlinear product development path. You may think you're heading down a particular road and you get a turn, and you know, sometimes it's the best thing that happens. So that's, you know, that was kind of our story. We had constituents that had defined needs. You know, we think we identified those needs. We tried to put some real customer-centric solutions against those needs. We made sure that our platforms could support, you know, curriculum and both customized and core. And we made sure that they were targeted not only towards administrators but also students and end users. There's a lot of rich reporting and rich media behind it. And you know, hopefully at the end of the day, we're delivering student, instructor, and institution valued outcomes with our different products. That's it. Thank you very much.